IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Welcome to All Things Policy. Today, I am Satya, and we'll be exploring the intersection of public policy, development, and energy access. In this episode, we'll focus on how energy access technically correlates with development. And so we begin with trying to understand what energy access is. It is the ability to obtain sufficient, affordable, and reliable energy services to meet basic needs and support economic and social development. Right. So energy access is not only a matter of electricity, like generally what occurs in our mind space, but also implies clean cooking, heating, cooling, and mobility. Now, public policy can affect energy access in multiple ways. We know the usual, which is by setting tariffs, subsidies, regulation standards, and incentives for providers of different energy sources and technologies. We are already familiar with this in terms of power distribution or setting up solar farms. Now, public policy will also influence the governance, financing, and delivery of energy services, as well as the participation and the empowerment of the end users, right? So they're I think, the primary stakeholder when it comes to understanding the impact of energy access. Now, this is also why energy access becomes essential for achieving many of the sustainable development goals that we have, which are something like poverty reduction, health improvement, enhancement of education, gender equality, climate action, and environmental protection. So, economic growth, job creation, and social inclusion are all direct outcomes of energy access. So, today to discuss this with me is Akansha Saklani, who is a manager with the energy program at World Resource Institute, India. Thank you so much for joining us, Akansha. If you could take a moment to introduce yourself and what you do, that would be great.
Thank you, Satya, for having me here. So, in World Resources Institute, we are actually a think tank who work for the sustainability of the future, so that the generations who are coming, have the equal opportunities as us. So we actually believe in change it, count it, and scale it. I work at the intersection. I work in the energy program, and I lead the anything and everything related to geospatial data and expertise for energy policy transitions, and how do we ensure that there's something actually on the ground. So the way we work is we are actually divided in different pillars. We talk about data, we talk about implementation or the pilots wherein we can actually find a proof of concept. Then we talk about finance, and we talk about policy, so that everything ends lead to a policy recommendation which we can then give to our partners and the ministries, and it leads to larger scaling up changes on the ground. So I lead the data pillar within the energy access team, and one of the platforms we are developing is called Energy Access Explorer. It is a platform we have developed for in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. I think we can come to the platform later on, but energy is really important, and we try to put it in why a data-driven approach, and why it is important that you talk about tech and policy when you're trying to bring energy access and changes on the ground.
Right. That's fascinating, Akansha. Akansha has been working on this for quite some time, so there's no one better to ask to explain the critical role of energy in fostering economic development, right? Especially in developing countries. So, how would energy access impact development of communities, especially in rural and underserved areas? I mean, the usual avenues we know, like providing infrastructure, etc. But things that may not be readily visible to the layperson. Could you expand on that, maybe?
So, energy access or energy services are highly interconnected with the socioeconomic development and well-being. So, there has been several studies which have talked about how improvement of energy access improves health services, education, gender equality, indoor environments, and day-to-day activities like heating, cleaning, cooking. And before I actually go on going to the access, I would also like to mention that there's a report which came in 2023, which says that life without reliable electricity is still a reality for more than 750 million people globally. 650 million people do not have access to energy at all. 3 billion people do not have access to reliable electricity. And without electricity, refrigerators can't even store the food. Hospitals can't have vaccinations. They can't even use power devices. Schools can't keep lights on so much. To let's go a little bit deeper. There was a cross-sectional study in Jharkhand, wherein they said that pregnant women prefers to go to hospitals which have electricity and running water because it gives them higher trust in the facilities. This actually, the scheme which came from government, the Janani Suraksha Yojana, which says that pregnant women, if they are delivering their child in hospital, they will get 6,000 rupees per childbirth. It also tells us that for the women to go there, you need to have electricity. Similarly, in 2014, UNDESA, which said that if electricity access is provided in school, the dropout rate reduces for the students. So, electricity access has been seen as an enabler. Very recently, a study came in the Nature journal where it talks about how increase in electricity access provides the option of clean cooking for the women, which in turn reduces the infant mortality of the children.
Oh,
So
wow.
energy
Okay.
access becomes very important in each and every sphere of the life. And so energy access is a two-way paradigm between energy and development. So energy electrification can access growth but development, but also create a strong continued demand for energy. So basically countries need a paradigm shift to develop their energy system, so that what happens is like, if you give energy access, the indicators start improving, the development happens, and as they are developing, the demand for energy keeps on increasing. So it's kind of a loop, and it's very important that energy access is provided to people who are there. When we started with our SDG goals, I think the number there were, I think 980 million people do not have access to electricity. Currently, we saw the number of people from 2018. In 2018, it was 750 million. Now it is 650 million. So if we see that the gap has reduced very slightly in 7 years, and we have 7 more years to reach to our SDG target, which says reliable, affordable electricity access for all. So I think it's really important that we do something that the gap actually reduces by going forward.
7 times as much, yeah. And it's very intuitive when you think about it. The connection you mentioned about how energy allows women to improve standards in clean cooking, etc., and then that directly correlates with infant mortality. It seems very intuitive when you think about it, but it's not something you hear generally, like when you talk about energy access or these goals, right? So that is interesting. I mean, this is a very broad-facing question, I guess. So, I mean, you can answer this any way you'd like. But what are some of the challenges faced by developing nations in ensuring, like you said, it's a feedback loop, right? As you provide energy to developing communities, they begin developing, and therefore the demand for energy keeps on rising. So ensuring this kind of ramped up access over time, how do you ensure that reliable and sustainable energy sources are used by developing nations to do this, to provide this continuous increasing energy demand?
Yeah, I think we are at a lucky stage right now that so there was a study very recently which came out, which said that solar is the cheapest cost of electricity at this moment, The reason I'm saying we are very lucky is because solar can be used as a decentralized renewable energy system, which then be provided in off rural hamlets where there's no connectivity. Taking a electricity grid network, distribution network, and transmission line will be very cost. It will increase the cost. But if I'll say the challenges in developing countries are often to implement sustainable energy policies are generally economic limitations, lack of technological infrastructure, institutional and political impediments, and significance in social acceptability and awareness. So, like I gave you an example of DRE solution, putting a solar grid to electrify the remote areas. People, till the time they're getting the grid, they're very till the time they don't have the grid, they actually believe in the solar system. As soon as they start getting the grid, they want that we want the electricity which is coming from the government, that will have more advantages. But if I'll talk about economic limitations and financial hurdles are very big challenges, and especially when it comes to dangerous and uncertainties in developing nations. Like there was a study which said that in Pakistan it is very difficult to secure reasonable financing and luring private investments, be it local or foreign, for sustainable energy policies, because they don't know if their investment will be if there will be an ROI on the investment. Similarly, the budget becomes very difficult, and so the countries have said that there has been a worldwide agreement which says that developing countries need to transition to sustainable energy. There is a limited access to international climate finance and green funds. One of the things which we have also seen is that these countries will not have technologically foundation, technical know-how, how to construct or manage your renewable energy projects, and it also covers the issues like energy management services, storage, grid integration. Because so even if we talk about solar which is very cheap, it cannot be fully sustainable if it is not connected with us energy storage, because solar will also produce an electricity for a few hours. So can we actually complement it with storing energy so that during the evenings it works? Or the second thing can be hybrid solution where solar and wind comes together and work, which is something widely accepted in developing nations. Like in a country like Netherlands, the electricity companies are using green energy, and what they're doing is they're using lots of machine learning algorithms to predict what will be the amount of solar coming, what will be the amount of wind energy coming, and accordingly the higher generation, that is the electricity which is given to the consumers, and they keep on storing it in their battery as well, so that when it is dry, so if it is a cloudy day, there is no sunlight, the wind speed is less, the battery energy comes in as a backup. So in developing nations, there needs to be lots of investment in terms of finances, good policies, and ensuring that technology is also translated.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Yeah, so battery storage technology is, I think, one of the primary bottlenecks for large-scale fielding of renewable energy. And we should be discussing that in a subsequent episode, actually, because the public policy implications of that is immense, especially with standardization and investment. Like basically getting investment into the startups who are developing this is a whole different rabbit hole. Okay, so moving on. So you mentioned about machine learning algorithms and data-driven policy to figure out energy access. Can you discuss more about the role of data and the importance of this approach for energy access? So when you discuss the role of technology and innovation in addressing challenges to energy in developing nations, I mean, I assume it's a lot more easier in developed nations because, like you said, infrastructure, technical know-how, and basically innovating is a lot easier. Right. How do you create sustainable solutions for developing countries using this approach? Maybe, based on an experience, can you just take us through step by step?
So data is really important for any sustainable solution. And one of the projects which we are working on called Energy Access Explorer actually dwells deeper in the data part of energy access. So this particular platform is actually covering 32% of unserved and underserved area currently, which is a huge population in sub-Saharan Africa and India and Nepal. So what we have done is we started with the data. So in energy access, there has been lots of tools, platforms, data coming up. But the reason for us to start was that data supply and data demand should come together. So if utilities will make solar system or supply system without understanding the demand for electricity, it will not lead to viable and sustainable solution. And like you said, we are working in developing nations and we live in a resource constrained setting. We wanted to develop a system which is open source, open, and it can be scalable across nations. And the third thing was that people, the way we work with ministries, different departments. People with limited or no GIS understanding should be able to actually work on energy solutions and understand integrated energy planning. The word integrated energy planning is really important, that you understand where the demand is coming from. Is the demand coming from your population? Is the demand coming from your health facilities? Then you see what are the viable solutions. Because sometimes what happens is, like, you want to electrify a health facility. There is a grid network, a distribution line going at a distance of 100 meters. You can very well electrify it using a grid rather than having solar system there, because that will be more cost effective. So when we stay in a resource constraint setting, it is really important for us to talk about which is the best way to prioritize the intervention. So, since integrated energy planning is very important, what we have been doing is we work with different departments, and at a single place, you can get the data for energy, demand for hospitals, for schools, for livelihood. Like, what is a productive use of energy in agriculture? What is a cold storage requirement? Where are the road networks? Because even if you want to give the electricity, you should be able to go there where there's existing grid. And you can overlay it with on the top of with the potential will be your solar potential. How much of the sunlight is there to generate solar energy? What is a wind potential? In a country like Kenya, which is actually situated at the rift, they have very high geothermal potential. So can a country like Kenya think of a geothermal potential? But all these initiatives cannot be sustainable with one organization. So we work with different government organizations and NGOs and partners and have a sustainability plan and initiative working group, so that everybody takes it as a co-ownership to take it forward. And it's very important. I can let me give you an example of JAREDA. JAREDA is a Jharkhand Renewable Energy Development Agency in Jharkhand, one of the states in India. Jharkhand in itself is a very peculiar state because it has abundance of coal and mineral. But when you see MD there, this thing, multidimensional poverty, Jharkhand is one of the very poor states. So it's like a resource curse. Therein, the government decided, let's do solarization to increase energy, having electricity for schools, health facilities, police stations. So using the whole analysis from our EAE, JAREDA was able to solarize 300 PHCs. Basically, the idea was to prioritize, because you would want to solarize the facilities which are not getting electricity rather than the ones which are getting 24/7. So you can actually think, where do you want to go? And similarly, we have been working with the Ministry of Agriculture and Water in Ethiopia to ensure that there's a viability gap funding. Can government come in to ensure that they give last mile of funds, so that the investors do not feel that what will happen if the project is not successful. So this is one of the tasks which a developing nation should know, that at least see how your energy and supply are coming together. The second thing which I feel is, yes, this is the best time to talk about transitions, because like India, we have our net zero targets. We want to be completely, carbon free by 2070. And energy in itself is very big emitter of pollutants. So having decentralized energy solutions which are renewable also helps us accomplish our targets which we have given for IPCC. We give in COP, we go and we say that, it's important that we reduce our carbon footprint. So to bring a more just and sustainable world going forward.
Right, so that brings me. That's very enlightening, and I can sense the discussion around a lot of the other things, that the viability gap that you mentioned is probably going to be somewhere public policy can talk about a lot in terms of managing incentives, etc. Right? But that's for a subsequent podcast. But yeah, so what you mentioned brings me to a question, which is how do you think we can foster the participation and empowerment of energy users? Like you mentioned, figuring out demand is essential for like creating sustainable solutions, right? Which is why you created the whole data-driven approach. But on the other side of things, on the legal, social, cultural side, maybe policy side, how do you foster the participation and empowerment of energy users? I mean, the women, the next generation, the youth, and marginalized groups in the governance, financing, and delivery of energy services. When I say this, I mean in terms of, like, for instance, in Jharkhand, if the end users are not aware of solar, not aware, let's say, haven't been given the advantage of accessing solar energy before, and a grid has been set up, will they demand the energy from there? I mean, I'm probably phrasing it in the wrong way, but I assume you get the gist of what I mean. How does it happen?
So I think it's more of a behavioral change which has to come, because what happens is like people. It's a simple thing in some countries. When the natural rain is not happening, people put some liquid, I think hydrogen something, so that artificial rain can come in. So, but what happens, farmers, is that this is government made. This is not natural thing coming up. So similarly, people have a lot of trust in grids, that the government is giving us grid, and electricity access from grid is also somewhere seen as a status symbol. I think behaviorally, one thing is we have to kind of change that. Second thing which I've seen happening is a lot of different models are coming up in different institutions. Like, some people say that instead of putting the whole solar system on your rooftop because you don't have money, you can even go pay as go, or pay as you use. So a company is going to set up a solar system, and you have to pay for per unit of electricity you're using. So there are lots of models. How do you want to do? Do you want to go for a capex model or opex model? Capex model, like, it says that capital expenditure will be borne, but OPEX says that you have to only pay for operations of using the solar system. So different institutions have been using it in different ways, and same comes with the people. But what what we have also seen in our work is people really need to understand the importance of energy and how it is helping their work in day-to-day activities. So when an option is given to them, and there was a study which said that, in Kenya, when they started, they didn't have anything, so people didn't think. But when electricity started coming for 4 hours a day, they started getting mobile phones, TV, they started demanding for 8 hours, because then they realized that electricity can help us go more. So I think this is an incremental change, and it's a behavioral change as well. And it's going to take a lot of time. And I think I should also mention Saubhagya scheme here, which has actually helped electrify all the willing households in India, that, if you want electricity access, we are going to give you, and have the last mile connectivity, which has really improved the outlook of the states. Now, there was in a recent article, it was said that government of Gujarat and government of India are also going towards 24/7 electricity, because once you started getting the electricity, people now have started demanding 24/7 electricity. No power cuts. So I think it's like more of incremental change, and once they get used to it, they will start using it more and more. One thing which is really important is Saubhagya gave electricity access, but we should also ensure that the electricity access we are giving is affordable for the people. If it is not affordable, even though people need it a lot, they will stop relying on it. And you can even link it with the Ujjwala scheme which came. They start women were getting cylinders in terms of clean cooking, that you get cylinders, you don't have to get biomass and work on it. But eventually the cost of cylinders become so high that very marginalized people, they went back to biomass, even though they had the option of getting cylinders. So it's really important that we target behavioral change. We also target the affordability of accessing the services.
Yeah, the problem of affordability and distribution of power is, I mean, power is one thing. Energy as a whole is a whole different thing. Like I keep mentioning, please tune in to subsequent podcasts as well. I will probably discussing this. Just a couple of last questions before we finish this episode. In terms of approaching, I don't know if you have finally gotten around to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. But could you provide success stories or examples of any public policy-driven energy access or examples of improved energy access, let's say, which has transformed communities and individuals in developing nations?
I think best example for this would be Saubhagya. So, like I mentioned, that there was this report which came by SMAP, World Bank, WHO, tracking SDG targets. And so, in 2017 we started tracking the targets, India was not fully electrified. But this year, when the report came, and then it said every willing household in India has energy access, which in itself is a very big SDG target. And even if you go to Saubhagya dashboard, I think only one state, it's I think Chhattisgarh, which is 99.8% electrified. Everything else, all rural households are electrified, which in itself is a very big feat because it leads to a lot of incremental changes. And similarly, in Uganda, Ministry of Health actually sat with us, and we worked on a methodology. How can you solarize all the health facilities across Uganda, because health and electricity is really important. In 2023, starting of the year, WHO published a report, it was with WHO and partners, that 1 billion people access healthcare facilities which either have no electricity or unreliable electricity. We should not be even going on the importance of electricity for healthcare facilities because it's a huge topic. But imagine 1 billion people is so big. So if Uganda actually developed a strategy that, they will solarize all the health facilities at a go, they get higher negotiation power, because you can negotiate with vendors that instead of giving you one project, we're giving you more projects. Can you lower the cost? Can you increase operations and maintenance of the systems? And then it becomes a ripple effect, because it then improves your institutional delivery, it improves your maternal mortality rate, and it improves your immunization coverage rate. Because even for immunization, you need to store vaccines. So it's a very huge thing. But I think Saubhagya has been one of the best schemes. The government of India is also working on Uday scheme, which talks about how they can reduce the financial implications of the distribution company so that they can be financially viable, they can become green. And another scheme you can talk about in energy access is FAME 2 scheme, wherein government is giving a lot of money to subsidize electric vehicles. Transport sector is transport sector emits 27% of your carbon footprint, which is a huge sector. So if you get electric vehicles, but end to end it is green energy. So suppose your electricity is coming from your renewable energy sources, which is green, then it goes to your transport sector. So you're actually removing one complete layer of carbon footprint. And what it does is, because of subsidies, people are able to buy it very cheap. If you'll go to Delhi, you can EVs are they have to pay, I think, 70 paisa to 1 rupees 20 paisa for charging their EV per unit for EV charging. This reduces your one thing is carbon footprint. Also, it reduces your crude oil import. So a policy like this actually gives multiple benefits.
Yeah, I mean it's a very broad-ended question. So thank you for answering it in a very succinct manner. But yeah, I think that's all the time we have for today. We'll definitely continue this series in terms of and explore various aspects of energy access, including battery tech, including maybe misaligned or improper incentives for distribution, etc. So thank you so much for joining us in this episode, Akansha. We hope, and to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. If you want to learn more about this topic, Akansha, can you give provide any resources that people can go and read online or something like that?
So, one thing is they can also always reach out to us at energyaccessexplorer.org.
Yeah, so people can just look up World Resource Institute and the publication and the work. So we hope to see you again in our next episode, and we will discuss another interesting and relevant issue in public policy in the next episode of All Things Policy. Until then, have a great day, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle at Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.